Good evening. Thank you, gentlemen. Good evening. And this is indeed a pleasure to invite you to this terrific conversation that we are about to have on mental health becoming a top corporate priority. When we are very sure this mental health is literally staring in our face with tremendous amount of anxiety, depression, PTSD, afflicting generations after generations in this hyper-competitive world. What must corporates look into to make it a top priority? I'll start with, of course, we have Girish, we have Shail, we have Mr. Mishra, Mr. Karan. So I would start with the youngest first, Girish.
Got it. So, see, one is, I think I won't touch upon why mental health is important. I think where we have kind of gotten to a point where we all realize that mental health both has employer benefits and employee benefits, right? Employer benefits are also, like there was a time when employer benefits were not there apparent, but I think now we have come to a point where it is very well recognized that if you have happier, well-satisfied employees, they will work harder, they will be able to produce more, they'll be able to produce good quality work or higher quality work. So one is should it be a priority? I think that question is now well answered, right? It is definitely the challenge that's now coming is like, how do you make it work for your organization? That's probably the question that also we're getting to. Now, there are 3 or 4 aspects to it, like what has been my experience in it, right? And again, I'll caveat it, my experience is generally in fairly aggressive tech companies which have investor pressure to grow and deliver on targets and double, triple every year, which means intense work pressure overall. And the 3 or 4 things which I want to talk about is, one is the policy aspect of the entire situation. Maybe we can pick this up as deeper into this thing, but one is the policy aspect of the entire situation. Is how are you able to frame organizational policies which support a less negative outcome in a lot of situations, right? So I'll give you one specific example. You're basically telling a person that you have to triple next quarter. But you also need to enable the person with a culture which is risk and enabling, which is also saying that, look, you go try out whatever you want to try out, the organizational will back you, right? You want to build that culture, you want to build those policies. He or she shouldn't be fearing that if I don't get 3x, I'll get fired, because then they'll get into negative practice. And also building policies in a way that enable sort of mental peace or better mental health while also making people push harder, right? Mental health does not mean that, I will give you less work. That is what should not be the case in anywhere. Mental health means creating an organizational environment which pushes people, but still makes them satisfied and happy and say that, look, I'll work. That's number one. The second thing which is coming up and which has been my experience is also the direct manager and employee relationship. Within the same organization, different teams have different status or happiness. And that happens a lot. Like all companies do their manager surveys and those internal surveys and all. It happens a lot that within the same company, 2 teams will have very different ratings of employees which come in. So just the manager style and making sure that managers are educated upon the right way to treat employees, the right way to give negative feedback. That's one of the major causes of sort of mental health degradation which happens, is right way to have difficult conversations at times, right way to have culturally sensitive or gender sensitive conversations at times. So that's the next thing which I would sort of point out, that manager and employee interaction has to happen properly. The third aspect is overall the team culture in that sense, right? Is the team culture abusive? Is the team culture discriminating? How does the organization kind of talk about those things? That's different from policies. What happens is there's a gap between policy and culture. So you can see whatever you want in policy, like in a lot of places, and again, it might be slightly less in India, but in the Western countries, LGBTQ is a very big thing. Now the organization might say we are accepting, but on the ground it's actually not accepted. So very different from how do you make the team enabled at the point where peers are also accepting, peers are respecting of somebody, and so on and so forth. The last one is just training the employees to take on a better approach towards their own mental health, right? Making sure that they are able to prioritize. A lot of times we are not even realizing what is going on at home, right? And in India, what we particularly see, mental health is thoda sa taboo subject, right? So it's something which either people are ignorant or don't want to focus on. Can you as an employer focus a little bit and teach people how to do it? And we are seeing that happen, right? Like I worked in healthcare for some time. So bit of an exposure around how companies are now adopting these meditation apps into their company. So it's as a part of their corporate wellness package. They will have meditation as either as a discounted thing, as an offer, or they will have coaches which will come in and do some sort of mental health training and so on and so forth. So enabling the employee to manage their mental health. So that's how I see, like, maybe I've covered a lot of ground and we can kind of dig deeper, but those are the 3-4 things which are coming up, is like, get the policies right, get the manager right, get the culture right, and train the employee.
Mr. Karan, what's your take beyond what Girish has touched upon?
Nothing.
How do we?
He's touched upon everything. So there's nothing beyond what Girish has said. But I could pick up 1 or 2 things from what he said, and I could probably go a little deeper there.
Yes,
right?
please.
In fact, recently I've written a small piece on LinkedIn on quiet quitting. Right? And quiet quitting is something that people have forever thought is a big HR challenge, whereas actually it's a team leadership challenge. It's not an HR problem, it's a team leadership problem.
Please elaborate.
Quiet quitting is when you have people who have not quit, who are still on the rolls, but they just come to the office, do what is the bare minimum that needs to be done so that they can move on to the next day. And they come back and they do the bare minimum again and they move on to the next day. Which basically means that there is no enthusiasm, there is no excitement, there is no drive to do anything new, there is no task ownership, there is no positive contribution to any kind of a productivity metric. They're just there. They're just bodies on roll. They haven't quit, they haven't tendered in their resignation, but they're just there. They're just bodies on the chair. And while I was writing this piece, one of the things I realized why people do this is, sometimes, and more often than not, it's not out of choice. It's because of the kind of influences they have been exposed to at their workplaces, which has directly impacted either their personal self-esteem or their mental health. And self-esteem, mental health go hand in hand.
Connected, right? Intertwined.
If you have, and he's touched upon pretty much a very large range of subjects, but specifically, if you have toxic leaders who become personal when they're trying to correct you, who become personally corrosive, and they attack you, the person, and not you, the professional who's under-delivered on a professional objective, it will send a lot of employees back on the back foot, and it'll get them to disengage. And as you keep disengaging, you keep retiring into a shell. And as you keep retiring into a shell, mentally you get into a very bad space. Call it depression, call it pre-depression, call it whatever you'd like to call it, right? So toxic leaders is a problem. Toxic team members. There are some people who are extremely high performers, but they're just toxic influences in the team. They will do whatever it takes to score their own goals, not worrying about anybody else and everybody else in the team, right? These people singularly need to be identified and removed, even if they are your best performers. Because what they're doing in turn is destroying the larger team fabric, the larger team spirit, right? And when they destroy, they are making the other people around them get into a bad mental space, which again goes back to the entire mental health conversation there. Now, of course, mental health, as he mentioned, my friend here mentioned, for the longest time has been a taboo subject. People said, I'll be less of a man or I'll be less of a woman if I admit publicly that I need help. I will feel a less of a person, right? But I think it's about time. And honestly, in India, these conversations, in the West, longer, but in India, in the last 3, 4, 5, 6 years, I have to say, and one of my favorite examples, I've spoken about this earlier, is I have to say that Deepika Padukone did a great service when she spoke about depression some 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. Suddenly, somebody openly spoke about depression, right? And that depression is reality. And it needs to be clinically addressed. And you need help, right? So if people can be encouraged, A, you do things that it doesn't happen, right? Which are some of the things that the corporate plays that we can. B, If it is happening, can you encourage people to speak about it and to seek help? Third is what was mentioned was, of course, if you as an employer can provide products and services, which could be in the form of apps or counseling sessions that can help alleviate this situation. My only two piece on that is that if those interventions happen once a week, once a month, once a fortnight, as another box that the corporate has tick marked, it's not going to work. Because if you need meditation, if you need whatever else you need to get your mental semblance back, it needs to be part of your daily routine at some level. And a certain discipline needs to be put in that. It cannot be an HR intervention done once in a quarter and you're done with my mental health kind of a target. So yeah, it's a complex issue.
As a leader, sir, what's your, from leadership standpoint, how should, probably taking on very left, how should a leader literally have a buy-in in that policy, that the leader has to stay invested, that this really matters? Organization really revolves around one central important piece called mental health.
I think we talk a lot about performance-based culture. Okay, we talk a lot about recognizing the winner. We talk a lot about creating competition between the teams. We talk a lot about competition intra teams. I think these are sure recipes for those of us who have been to management schools, IITs. You have a class of 50. They're all heroes in their schools and their communities. They come here. One has a CGPA of 10. Other person has a CGPA of 4. So how do you cope up with that kind of a pressure? So you are. The winner is always looking behind, worried someone will catch up, and the loser is, a loser. I think we have to respect failures. We have to understand that failures are a part of our life, and we have to handhold people. As a leader, okay. This is one. So, for example, in my company, I always say that please fail. But let failing not become a habit. So this is one.
And can we learn from why we failed?
Yeah. One is you fail. Failures are allowed, but let failing, not become a habit. This is one. Second thing is, you have to enjoy the journey. This is the second part. When we bid for a project, we have to enjoy the bidding process. Often you win and sometimes you don't win. So what? That has to be the next time. So this is the second part. Third part, I must say is that, we have to understand that some level of stress is required for you to perform. There's a curve.
Yep.
Y-axis is stress, axis is performance.
Yeah.
So till that time you have to push the people. But beyond that, stress will increase and performance will, will go down. So by using these simple tricks, techniques, tools, provided you believe in them, you can create an environment where stress is optimum, stress is positive.